At the time that St. Norbert lived, such was his influence that many thought that he would outlive the one that he knew, Bernard of Clairvaux, in the influence that he would have. As it turned out, Bernard is more talked about now than Norbert, partly because Bernard wrote. The sermons are still read, and we often hear his voice in the office. But Norbert was very powerful in his day, a great preacher, a magnet who would draw souls after him. He himself was of noble birth and was in the ecclesiastical career of the time, but he wasn't taking it seriously until suddenly he was caught in a storm and fell off his horse and realized that he was close to death, and should he die in that state he wouldn't be prepared. At that point he took things very seriously and asked for ordination. He was already a subdeacon, but he wanted the diaconate immediately and the priesthood, and he was given what has since been referred to as the Norbertine privilege, still in existence. He had them on the same day. He founded a society of men who were prepared to take on both the outward appearance and the adornment of the new man. The first in the form of the religious habit, and the latter in the dignity of the priesthood. And in this, even though the influence of the Cistercians was there, in the outward bearing of the white habit and the monastic discipline, he based it on a different dynamic internally. The priesthood and the living of the fact that one was actually a priest, and therefore that took the place to some extent of what was the basis of the other monastic life, manual work or intellectual work. And it was a deliberate return to the simplicity of the life lived by the apostolic group, as we find it in the 4th chapter of the Acts of the Apostles. The Vita Apostolica was seen to be this life of sharing of all, and all in one mind and one heart. And in that optic they took the rule of St. Augustine, not that of St. Benedict. Augustine is the doctor, the teacher of charity par excellence. So they undertook to follow the sacred scriptures and accept Christ as their leader. He used to recommend 3 things in particular: cleanliness at the altar and at the divine offices, and that is a characteristic of the Premonstratensian life to this day. Nothing is spared. The correction of excesses and failings at the chapter meetings that we had kept at St. Antimo on a daily basis, and the care of the poor and hospitality towards them. And when I was a guest pastor, I became very much aware of the importance of that link with the world. One is the bridge, and the way that one welcomes a soul in the name of Christ is very important. Even welcoming them with a good voice on the phone, or a letter, or a confession. It was all extending the charity of Christ, and it's not an indifferent element either in the witness value of a monastery. And we were blessed insofar as we had a very beautiful area, for nature also heals, as does a solemn liturgy. We had incense every day, and everything was fully sung. And he drew by the 1,000 converts, believers, men and women, and convents of nuns started to flourish as well. So great was this multitude that many claimed that since the age of the apostles, no one had won for Christ in such a short space of time so many who desired to embrace the state of perfection. But it was left to his successor, the first real abbot of Prémontré, Blessed Hugo IV, to actually codify the spirit of St. Norbert. He himself was made Archbishop of Magdeburg and has ever since been regarded as an important figure in that eastern part. And he took with him the best of the contemplative life, but put in action. One thing characterizes him, it's his defense of the Blessed Sacrament. Hence he's always presented with a ciborium or a monstrance in his hand. There was a heresy of the time, Tanchenin. He was somebody who denied that hosts consecrated by priests living in sin were truly consecrated, but they were. And Norbert went around collecting them, saving them and honouring them and making reparation. To this day there's a very strong Eucharistic element to the order. Pope Pius XI referred to it in this term: your order is gloriously Eucharistic and Eucharistically glorious. Indeed, the formation I had from the beginning to have always, every day, until one dies, 1 holy hour of adoration for the Blessed Sacrament, even in the tabernacle, we had it also exposed a lot in Ireland, was something which has not gone away, and it's very balancing, that hour of looking at Jesus, for it means that he is the force at work in all one's eventual apostolate. The word is first received and then only given. One can't give what one has not got. He was living at the time of the Gregorian reform. Hildebrand, Pope Gregory VII, who was cleaning up the whole clergy of the Western world, enforcing celibacy, and there was a move also to enforce poverty and a certain community life, but that didn't happen. What did happen was that there was an enforcing of the new congregations that did that, the regulars, and the Premonstratensians were a major one at the time. And there was also a need for freedom from the state power. That was a huge struggle at the time. You know, of course, of what happened in England with the martyrdom of Thomas of Canterbury. All these offices he carried out faithfully and fearlessly, so that people said faith is Norbert's great quality, just as charity was Bernard of Clairvaux's. Apart from that, he was very charming and easy to talk to. He, of course, being noble, could have been aloof, but he wasn't. He had the gift of appearing on equal terms with everyone, great or small, and so was liked by all. Finally, he was an eloquent preacher. When he preached the word of God, vices were wiped out and virtues refined by the fire of his eloquence. And people with well-disposed minds were enlightened with wisdom. He spent hours, long hours, meditating on divine truths, and was fearless in spreading the knowledge of them.